Welcome to episode 5 of Fantasy Baseballin here from Fighting Chance Fantasy Sports. I am your host, Steve Rappin, here to talk some shortstop position with you tonight. I was on hiatus last week. I don't know if I want to tell you guys or the listeners what I was doing last week because you guys will just laugh at me. You will say, Steve, I thought you were in your 40s, not in your 90s. It's bound to happen. And so, no, I will tell you, sorry. I went and played bingo for the first time last week. I don't know if I've ever played bingo before, but some friends of ours were going and they asked my wife and I to go, and we went, and I lost my ass off and didn't win a damn thing. So let's just say I probably won't be going again. But enough about that. We don't need to talk about bingo. We're here to talk fantasy baseball. So I am joined by two of our brightest baseball minds, Corbin and Jim. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. We got hit with some snow over here, and it's kind of rare to have that. So it's like, playing outside, and it's yeah.
For those that don't know where you're at, Corbin, whereabouts are you at? And why don't you share your Twitter handle too, so people can go ahead and find you on Twitter?
Yeah. I live out in Washington State, in the Pacific Northwest. So we usually don't get hit too much with snow. You can find me on Twitter at Corbin_Young21.
All right. And Jim, how are you doing tonight? It's a Friday or Saturday night. God, this weekend is already flying by.
I think it's Saturday. They all kind of blend together at this point. No, I'm good. Just hanging out, getting through some activities with the kids, and through some baseball cards with the Topps 2021 release out. Just hanging out.
Boy, once we have kids, our life changes a little bit. There's no more bar nights on Saturday. It's kind of, you're sitting there playing with Barbies and stuff like that on Saturday nights. So, but you know what? Those are the things that we don't want to change. So, Jim, real quick, what's your Twitter handle where people can find you out there?
At Jim Riley Live. Simple stuff.
All right. And enough with the small talk. No one wants to hear about us. They want to hear about some shortstop sleepers and busts and prospects and all good fun kinds of stuff out there. So let's dive right into the position here. Each week, we, instead of going over the rankings from top to bottom, we try to mix it up a little bit. Anyone can do that. If you want to listen to one of those podcasts, there's 100 of them out there that you can listen to. So we want to try to bring you a little bit different and maybe dig into some players a little bit deeper. So what we're going to start with is maybe a player in the top 10 or say 15 or so. And we go by the NFBC average draft position tool. So if you wonder where we get our ADP from, and we sort by draft champions as well, we go by the last month. So from January 13th through February 13th. We're going to start with some overvalued players in the top, say, 10 to 15, those players that are drafted as a shortstop that's going to be in your starting lineup that may be just a little bit overvalued. So let's go ahead and start with Corbin. Corbin, do you got a guy in particular that you think is overvalued at the shortstop position this year?
It's shortstop just so deep, I guess, man, I hate to talk down on this guy because I love the player, but Adalberto Mondesi's, he's arguably the riskiest player in fantasy baseball, right? It's just a high risk, high reward. It's got ADP at pick 20. I wouldn't be surprised if he got pushed up a bit just because, on a per plate appearance basis, he's, just could lead the league in steals any day, right? So, mostly it's just hard to take a guy that risky early. Since from 2018 to 2020, he's got the second highest swinging strike rate behind Jorge Alfaro. He also has an extremely high chase rate, and he also ranks second to last in contact rate from 2018 to 2020. Only a little bit better than Joey Gallo. So, chasing a lot and making little contact is a risky profile. So yeah, it's just hard to, I just rather get a safer shortstop. Like I said, shortstop's so deep, right? Like if I could get, even Xander Bogaerts, so we'll talk about a little bit, Corey Seager, Tim Anderson, all those guys, probably take those guys over him. So.
Well, let me ask you this as kind of a follow-up question then, because I think with Mondesi, it comes down to overall draft strategy as well. Do you find yourself, are you more of a conservative fantasy baseball drafter, or do you find yourself swinging for the fences more? I'm just trying to figure out if Mondesi is just too risky as a player, or is it your overall draft strategy that you're normally a little bit more conservative and don't go for some of these more higher reward, higher risk players?
Yeah, I guess, I would say, depending on the site you're playing on, right? Like, so NFBC, there's generally like an overall component. So a lot, like a guy like Mondesi is going to be pushed up. I've definitely rostered Mondesi before, but, so like in your home leagues and stuff like that, he's probably going to fall a little bit down, probably in that like third, fourth round range. And so like, if I feel good about my first couple of picks, then I'm fine doing that. The problem is, I think it's just, just that upside that like he's just might get pushed up, but I do tend to go safety in the front end. So, I'll take my risk and gambles more a little bit later, but I'd rather not whiff on like my second round pick if that's what Mondesi is going to end up being.
And I'm a swing for the fences guy. I will go for those risky players every day. I might mix in a few conservative ones, but I like swinging for the fences. So, Jim, how about you? Do you have any players that you think are just a wee bit overvalued at the position this season?
It's a challenging question to really try to answer, because I think Corbin alluded to it. It's so deep, and looking at where everybody's drafted, it's really just kind of nitpicking, honestly, with how good the shortstop position is. I mean, you see guys that are going, 8, 9, 10. That it's amazing to think that they're that far down. But the one area I will nitpick is with Trey Turner going as the average draft position 7th, going in the first round, and Francisco Lindor going 16th. That is the only that's the one area where I'm like, I'd flip-flop that, because Trey Turner, he's always had a lot of hype. In every draft I've ever done, I feel like Trey Turner, it's got to be because of the speed and the power potential. Trey Turner's always been a hot one for half the guys in the league that I'm in. And last year he delivered on it, right? He had the power. The steals were adequate for the number of games that they played. But I don't think the power's not going to be on that track. He's not going to hit 30 home runs. And, he's going to probably steal about 30 to 40 bases, which is great, but he's probably going to hit 15 to 20 home runs. So, I think Francisco Lindor is going to do what he's always done. He's going to hit 30 home runs. He's going to be in a nice lineup. Francisco Lindor is. So I would flip-flop. I would rather take Francisco Lindor in the first round over Justin Turner. And that's not really saying that Francisco Lindor is undervalued, because I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I just think that Trey Turner might be going a little bit high by, again, it's nitpicking, by like a round or two, quite frankly.
So what you're saying is sometimes when we see people switch leagues, like Francisco Lindor is doing, going from the American League to the National League, going to be facing a whole new crop of starting pitchers. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, he's got a great lineup there. So mm-hmm. You're saying you don't have any concerns as far as, him facing some new pitchers and maybe there being a learning curve? You think, he's such a good
player. Because
I don't think so, but
I don't think there will be, because last year I spent all of last year looking at splits for the Fighting Chance fantasy site. Every single day I went through and I looked at the head-to-head splits, and Francisco Lindor did not jump out to me as somebody that just always had great splits against central pitchers, right? Like Nick Ahmed stands out. He has great splits against NL West pitching. James McCann had great splits against AL Central pitching, which I actually do think James McCann will struggle in the National League East because he's not going to have that. Lindor had some nice splits, but it wasn't constant. It wasn't up. He's facing another one. He's facing another one. He's gonna go off. So I think he's going to be fine. And now, with technology the way it is, a lot of these guys watching tape, looking at the metrics, knowing what pitchers like to do and what count and all this other stuff, I don't think it impacts him that much.
Now when it comes to my guy, I don't like you guys. It sounds like I'm kind of nitpicking a little bit, but one guy that I think might be just a little bit overvalued to me is Carlos Correa. And I know that every year we hear, well, this is the breakout year. This is the breakout year. And we just haven't seen it yet. One, he's battled injuries throughout his career. Yes, he did play in 58 games last year, so he did play in a, quote, whole season. But he only had 5 home runs, no stolen bases. This isn't a guy that's going to get you a lot of stolen bases. And I just look at his profile, and yes, of course, he has the ability to break out, but George Springer is gone now, so you got one tool out of the lineup. His projections show him around 25 home runs, 260 batting average, 80 runs, RBIs. It's good. Don't get me wrong. That's not bad. But I just look at the guys going after him, and just about every other guy after him offers something as well. Like, Tommy Edman might not quite give you the power, but if you need some steals, he can give you 10, 15 steals and, with similar batting average. Marcus Semien can give you, similar stats, but maybe even a few more steals. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 10 steals this season. Jonathan Villar is a guy that's going to, not as good of a batting average, but if you need some steals, he's a guy that offers that. And hell, Didi Gregorius, yes, his stats are almost identical, and he's going at pick 165, whereas Correa's going at 127. So I like Correa. I just don't see myself drafting him because I like the guys after him even more, and I don't see that he offers much other than a little bit of upside to those guys behind him.
I have never been a Carlos Correa guy. I'll take that back. I was a Carlos Correa guy his first year in baseball, and after that, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, or he hasn't lived up to potential. I've never been a Carlos Correa guy. I love you bring up Marcus Semien. We got to see where Simeon's going to bat in that Blue Jays lineup, because he could have some great guys behind him and in front of him. Carlos Correa, since he has been called up, has not played a full season in 17 or 18 or 19. He played a full season last year, 58 out of 60 games, but it was only 60 games. I want nothing to do with Carlos Correa.
I just pulled up Roster Resource, and they have him, Semien, projected to bat second in the lineup. Springer leadoff, Semien, Bo Bichette, Teoscar Hernandez hitting cleanup. So you want to
he's got Springer, if he's got Springer in front of him and Bo behind him, it's going to be good things. It's going to be a good year for Marcus Semien.
Exactly. So, all right, well, let's move over to maybe some undervalued players. Is there, we could use the word sleeper if we want. I prefer the word undervalued just because sleeper is kind of a generic term, and maybe it's played out a little bit. So are there guys out there that you think are a little bit undervalued? So since I started with Corbin last time, Jim, let's start with you this time. Who are you looking at out there for undervalued players?
Again, I feel like I'm nitpicking. You did mention Didi Gregorius. I was not planning to talk about him, but Didi Gregorius is a great one, going around that 165. His highest draft position, I think, is 128. I think Didi Gregorius can probably finish as a top 100 fantasy player. So Didi Gregorius is one. I was thinking about Gleyber Torres, and Gleyber is the number 11 shortstop coming off the board. His average draft position is around 68, 69.
Nice.
And I think Gleyber will be a top 50. So I think Gleyber's a top 50. Maybe the biggest jump is Didi, because Didi's around 170. I think he finishes at a top 100 player, whereas Gleyber is going at 68, 69. I think he could be a top 50. If he's healthy, which is the question mark for a lot of guys, but if he's healthy, I'd like Torres to move into that top 50 and better, because look at what he did in 2019. He was a monster in 2019, and I think 2020 was just a setback.
I agree. Corbin, how about you?
I think if we're looking at I do like Gleyber Torres. If we're looking at like inside the top 12, I do like Xander Bogaerts as a guy. But if I'm looking like a little bit deeper, some guy that I just drafted in the league is Paul DeJong. We talked about this before, but kind of discounting some of the Cardinals 2020 season, quarter of the Cardinals tested positive for COVID-19, and DeJong was one of those guys. And so when you look at his 2020 line, like, it looks awful, but I think he's just like a consistent kind of underrated guy that he's going to get everyday plate appearances. If we're talking about, I was going to mention him earlier, but I think he can put up similar numbers to someone like Carlos Correa.
Mm-hmm.
But just, obviously much later, maybe like 50 or so picks later. And so he's definitely a dude that I like a lot. You have to, you can't imagine he's going to have a high batting average, but he's going to fill a stat sheet. I think with Arenado there, it just makes the lineup just a little bit better. And so he's a guy that I like getting, and it's so deep that like, I don't mind waiting that long, like to pick 200 or so to get my starting shortstop.
Exactly.
Yeah, he could be, and I mean, he could be, if you have a middle infield spot, he would be a beast to have as your middle infielder. I play in a couple leagues that have MIs. He would be awesome in that spot, and yeah, he's a great one.
I'm going to go with a guy a little bit further down, and technically he doesn't play shortstop, but he's multi-position eligible. He has shortstop eligibility, so I'm going to go with him anyways, and that's Chris Taylor. He plays for the Dodgers, and anytime I can get a piece of a good team like the Dodgers, I'm going to try to do it. He's going to be playing likely second base, but he moves around there and can play all over, which is nice. He's going as a 22nd shortstop off the board. And so you don't even have to draft him as your shortstop / second baseman or outfield. You can draft him as your middle infielder. You can plug him into the outfield, which is nice. And he's a guy that, even though he's going down average draft position, let me just see, I think it was around 218 here, 228, excuse me. He's a guy that can get you 15 to 20 home runs. He gets you steals, which is nice, and he doesn't kill you in batting average. I mean, he should be hitting 250, 260, and with that multi-position eligibility, it's nice. And he's going to be hitting, typically I don't like to get hitters that are hitting at the end of the lineup. He's right now projected to bat 9th in that Dodgers lineup, but man, he's going to have Mookie Betts and Corey Seager hitting after him, and so he should be a good source of runs in that lineup. So Chris Taylor is just a guy that I think he's underrated almost every year. He's not flashy, of course, because you got so many guys on that Dodgers lineup that steal the spotlight from him, but he's just a good, solid guy. You can plug in at second, you can plug in at short, you can plug in an outfield wherever you need help, middle infield, and he's just going to produce for you.
Yeah, it's important to keep in mind that the players around him, right? Like we look at so many times in fantasy baseball, we look at the individual player, we analyze the player, we analyze his barrel rate, his hit rate, all this stuff of that one player, and we forget about the guys around him. He's got a great supporting cast.
Exactly. So, let's go a little bit deeper. No, that was down the line a little bit, but let's look at some deep sleepers here. Some guys that aren't necessarily drafted as starters, maybe guys that can be backups, or maybe not even guys that are drafted at all, but ones that you want to keep your eyes open for, and maybe put on your watch list. So if they start heating up, you can go ahead and pick them up during the season. So I started with Jim here. So Corbin, do you have anyone deeper that you are keeping your eye on this season?
Yeah, I have a few, but I'll just talk about one. In that range of Nico Goodrum, I would take J.P. Crawford, Luis Urias. There's a lot of them. I mean, even Elvis Andrus, who just recently signed or got traded. But Nico Goodrum is a guy that, before last year he came in and everybody was just loving him, right? He's a sleeper and stuff like that. Just another guy that's just like awful. He had an oblique injury, so again, I'm kind of like just discounting that 2020 season. It's hard to swing a bat if you have an oblique injury. So assuming health, I think I like him as he's going to give you some double-digit home runs and steals. The projections on his batting average is awful, so just keep that in mind. He did hit like 248, 245 in 2018 and 2019 in terms of batting average, but the projections have him at like 225 or 230. It's not great, but just dual eligible guy, more of a bench depth kind of guy. I think, not someone, hopefully not someone that you're relying on as a starter, but, he can fill in here and there if there's an injury or something. So Nico Goodrum is a guy that I'm looking at a little deeper.
All right, Jim, how about you?
There were a couple of guys I settled on here, and one, San Francisco Giants, Mauricio Dubon. He is going, where's he going right now? Let me pull that back up. He's down there. where was he? 286, something around there.
Yep,
So
286, the 27th shortstop off the board.
right, he's down there, and I think he's somebody who has just shown a nice progression. Right, I think that there's potential for 2020 here. I think he has the potential for 20 homers and 20 steals if everything falls in line. His metrics are just the metrics are looking good. Launch angle, barrel rate, his ability to draw walks, all of that just kind of helps. Just I like things that are like good habits, right? Good signs of good things to come. And he was one of those guys that when you're this far down, if you're looking this far down, you're looking for signs of life sometimes. And I think he's got a few of them. So Dubon is somebody that, maybe you don't draft, but you hit that, you watch him right from the start, or maybe you do draft him if it's deep enough. And he's somebody you sort of stash and see how he starts.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah.
I'm going to go with a guy that Corbin mentioned as well, and J.P. Crawford. I mean, the guy had the pedigree. He was drafted 16th overall by the Phillies in 2013. So to be that high of a draft pick, you definitely have the potential for more. The guy's going to be leading off in Seattle, which they're not the greatest of team, but anytime you get that opportunity to lead off for a team, there's the potential for upside there. He can steal bases. I wouldn't be surprised if he got you 10 to 15 stolen bases. And he could get you double-digit home runs as well. So he's a guy that I don't think has the highest upside that we thought he might when he was coming into the league. But he's a guy that I think is, a good source of steals. He's not going to kill you at power. He's not that guy like D. Gordon who'd get you 2 home runs or 1 home run. I think he does have the potential. I'm looking at all the projections right here. They all have him in between 10 and 14 home runs between depth charts, Steamer, ATC, the bat, and so on. So they all have him projected at double-digit home runs and double-digit steals, other than Zips, who has him at nine steals. So, give me that for that deep. He's going right now. He is the, and I just had it, but J.P. Crawford's a 35th shortstop off the board at an average draft position of 381. So why not? Sign me up. I'll go with it. Let's move over. Everyone loves to talk about prospects. And so let's go through. Are there any prospects that you guys are keeping your eyes on this season? Jim, let's kick it off with you.
There's a lot of exciting shortstops. The shortstop position, it's when you're coming up, it's the position you want to play. It's the fun position. When you look at the top international prospects this year, like 2/3 of them were all shortstops if they weren't pitchers. So it's a great position to kind of come up with. And there's a lot of guys, Franco is in the pipeline, but I think we're going to have to wait on him a little bit. Horner's got shortstop eligibility, Jazz Chisholm, Jeter Downs. There's, Bobby Witt Jr. is a ways away. There's Austin Martin, the Blue Jays, has shortstop eligibility. So if you're doing like the dynasty stuff, that's some of that stuff you're going to have to maybe wait. But I like specifically for this year, and he may start the season in the minors. But if he does, I don't think he stays down there for too long. And that's Jazz Chisholm. I am a Jazz man. I love me some Jazz. And I took him last week too. So I feel like I'm kind of cheating, but we were talking about him because he has the dual eligibility. I like Jazz Chisholm. I think that the power and the speed is there down in the minors. He was popping 20 homers and stealing 20 bases. And on top of that, just looking at his scouting, like what did the scouts see when they saw Jazz Chisholm? They got a 55 out of 80 power and a 55 out of 80 run. And to me, that just smells like 2020. Now, does he hit that this year? That might be a long shot. That might be asking a lot. But if you are in a keeper league where you get to keep a couple players, or maybe you're in if you're in a long-term keeper, he's probably already gone. But, he's definitely one of the prospects that I'll be watching. I might draft him. Straight up. Depends on how things are going in spring training.
Yeah, and he was traded from, in a trade that for Zach Gallen as well. So, he's a decent prospect as well. And I don't even know if we should call him a prospect anymore, but at the time he was. And so you got to like to see how teams value players. And so that's always a good sign when you see that as well. So Corbin, how about you? Any prospects you're keeping your eyes on this season?
Yeah, I don't think I'm drafting any prospects, but Jeter Downs is a shortstop eligible prospect to kind of have on your waiver wire watch list. More and more as I kind of just like dabble in some of them. I'm not super like hardcore into dynasty leagues, but I do have a few, and as I dabble in them, these guys kind of stand out. Power speed guy, right? He in 2019 hit 19 home runs, 23 steals. Just kind of gives us an idea of what the power speed potential. He's also known as having a good hit tool and strong OBP skills, which plays, right. And so, not trying to compare anything, but when I see stuff like that or see minor league stuff like that, I think we could see a similar guy to like Mauricio Dubon kind of thing, where he's got a pretty good hit tool, so he's not gonna destroy you in batting average or on base skills, but he's gonna give you like double digit steals and home runs. So that's, again, just got to monitor. I'm not sure if he'll make it up in 2021. I imagine that he would have if we had a normal 2020 season, even towards the end, but I think he could make his push for getting some playing time late in the season. So just a name to monitor. But
well, I told you guys I like to swing for the fences, so I guess I will be the one to mention Wander Franco. He's the number one overall prospect at the position. He is an elite prospect coming up in the Tampa Bay organization. I think, Jim, you hit it, that it's a question about whether we see him or not, but he did all reports from reading is he performed well, of course, going up into 2020, and then he performed well at their alternate training site, and he did earn a spot on the postseason taxi squad. So even without really playing any games last year, supposedly he was performing well at their sites. And look, this is a thing that I could read from MLB.com, but the guy's got an 80 grade hit tool. What they say is, and here's one line that I wanted to read: Franco has the physical tools and natural ability needed to become the top switch hitter of his generation. So that kind of got things moving downstairs for me a little bit. I don't know that the show just went from PG to PG-13 a little bit, but you know what? I think we can handle it. It's a Saturday night and we're getting a little bit crazy. So, anytime you have that, I get a little bit excited. All the projections have him. I'm looking at right now, ATC has him at 76. The rest of them have him at 96 games played this season. I think that's a little bit high. I don't necessarily see that.
No, the problem is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the problem is that the Rays right now, their situation at the middle infield, there's no room, right? You've got Brandon Lau, and I know you can move him around. The versatility is important, right? Because you can maybe move Lau and you move Choi, but you got Willy Adames now in that spot. And Willy Adames hasn't done anything to hold on to that. He's been nice. They got to move Willy Adames and see if he can play some other positions. They've got a log jam at that middle infield spot. Just looking over their prospects, you've got Lau and Adames there now. You've got Vidal Brujan, who's a top prospect in his own regard, is 3 years older, and is closer just in terms of the track than Franco is. But you saw Soto come up at 19 years old with the Nats and absolutely dominate. Why couldn't Franco do the same? That middle infield spot is going to be fascinating to watch. I think we'll see it coming. Like if they start experimenting with Willy Adames in left field or something like that, that could be a sign that Franco's on the way.
Oh, I agree. And I just go back to, I love listening to fantasy baseball talk on Sirius and podcasts and so on. And I remember Jim Bowden was talking about Juan Soto. And it's funny that you mentioned Juan Soto because it brought it up to the time where I was listening to him talk about going to spring training for Washington. And apparently they have the backfields, whatever those are. And apparently it was a spectacle at what Juan Soto was doing. And I've heard several different Juan Soto comps to Wander Franco. So I mentioned before, I'm a guy that likes to swing for the fences. Here's the only thing that scares me a little bit. Right now, he's being drafted as the 28th shortstop off the board. He's in the top 300 right now. So if you want him, you're going to have to pay for him. And you might not have this guy for half or maybe even 2/3 of the season. I don't know. But I'm a firm believer. Talent rises. If there's always injuries. We know injuries always happen. There's nothing to say that Lau can't get injured or Willie Adames can't get injured. Or if Franco is playing that damn good, maybe they can find a trade partner for Willie Adames. Like you said, he hasn't really done much to stick around, or maybe they try to move him to the outfield and see what they can find, or so on. So I think talent rises. If he's good enough, he will be there. And I like the upside that this guy has. Anytime I hear 80 grade hit tool, I get a little bit excited. So. All right. Well, let's go to our final thing. Is there any players out there that you are just staying away from and not drafting this season? So, Corbin, let's kick it off with you.
Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of easy for me. Just Jake Cronenworth. He was a breakout star in 2020. I love when guys kind of like that, right? In his MLB debut, he basically had 4 months, 26 runs, 20 RBI, and 3 steals with a 285 batting average. Peak season in the minors was 10 home runs, 12 stolen bases. It's mostly because they signed Ha-Sung Kim and then, Jerkson Profar. It's like, I think they're just, from a real life perspective, they're just kind of adding to the depth. So, I mean, he could move around, but he's just not someone that excites me that I want to be plugging in every day. I think he more falls into the kind of Nico Goodrum, like he should be falling a little bit more into that category of like a bench depth kind of guy, but starter or util, I'm not, even if he's eligible, I'm not.
Yeah, he struggled in September. 543 OPS in September, and he really struggled against lefties. So you're gonna tell me you can't play Cronenworth half the games you play against the Dodgers because you got Urias or David Price or Clayton Kershaw out there? Like that's alarming.
Yeah, I agree. And so, Jim, how about you?
Because of how deep it is, I actually found a lot of names that I would not draft. My feelings on Carlos Correa. I won't touch him. Jonathan VR, now that he's on the Mets, I have a feeling we're going to see his ADP drop because he's just not going to play. They're not going to sit him over McNeil or Lindor because let's say they want to get him in second. They're going to move McNeil to left. They're going to sit Dom Smith. I mean, there's just too many walls for Jonathan VR at that shortstop position. Also getting sort of farther deep down the line. Like I won't touch Isaiah Falefa. Like, would not have him as a sleeper. I think that he's just got too many issues over there. So but I'll roll with my top 2, Correa and VR. I won't touch him.
That hurts my feelings.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Did you have Corbin? Did you want to go ahead and blast him? Come on, blast him.
No, I just said Isaiah Falefa, man. That hurts my feelings a little
bit. Well, I tried to find a guy that I absolutely will not draft at the position. And I can't really find any. I already kind of talked about Correa, but if the price was right, I would draft him. And I don't want to throw out a name at the position just to throw out a name if I don't want to necessarily put my name on it. So I guess I'll say Correa, likely because I won't draft him because I don't see him falling to a point where I feel comfortable drafting him with the guys behind me. But I don't see any just absolutely, Cronenworth was one that I was looking at. I didn't want to steal your guy, but
what about
the was there? I mean, we saw it that he does have that upside that he can perform really well as well. So I guess I'm just going to take the easy way out and be a chicken and say I don't really have a name this season at this one.
What about Ha-Sung Kim? Like he's got shortstop eligibility. Do you want to let other owners experience that, see if he's any good or if he flops? What about him?
Corbin, why don't you, since you talked about Cronenworth and Kim, do you have an answer to that question? Or they're being drafted almost identical.
They are
19 and 20 at pick 175 and 176. So they're almost drafted at the exact same spot.
Yeah. I think he's going to be a guy that is probably more like a second half player. If you look at what he did in the KBO, like, I mean, it's pretty exciting, right? Like his final, like last year in 2020, he had 30 home runs and 23 steals. He's got great play discipline. Strike to walk. He walks more than he struck out last year. One of my buddies, Dave Swan, he kind of dug into him a little earlier, and I've kind of warmed up to him a little bit just from talking to him a little bit. He watched a little bit more KBO than I did. So I think he's just going to be more like a second half guy. I think he's going to have to adjust a little bit to major league pitching. But the skills of like what we prefer in hitters is like on base skills, hit tool. Like I think they're there, and he's pretty young for actually a guy that's coming over from the KBO. I think he's like 25 or something like that. So I think there's potential for, again, like I hate to keep throwing a guy like this out, but like a Dubon or a Luis Urias, kind of like a double-digit home run, double-digit steal kind of guy with a decent batting average. I think that's kind of an expectation for him.
Okay. Well, let's close it out. Each week, we kind of do a fun question, and I didn't quite make it all the way to the end last week. Sorry, guys. I was busy this week, but we try to do a question to get to know us a little bit better. In this question, we didn't plan on, but I was going through my kids' Valentine's candy stash where they brought home from school on Friday, and it got me thinking about and maybe I shouldn't even ask Corbin this question. He's kind of a health freak. I know, Jim, you're probably a good candy guy like me, but what's your favorite candy? Jim, let's start with you. We'll give Corbin a little extra time, and if he says broccoli, I'm going to punch him in his damn face. So, Jim, what's your favorite candy?
I really get down with the organic oat milk chocolate covered broccoli. It's just delicious stuff there. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's great. No, I don't know why I haven't been able to shake it. The candy hearts, I just haven't been able to shake it since I was a kid. I still get them. I don't even have to I don't take them from my kids because I get my own stash. I don't know why I can't shake that one. That's my thing, is the candy hearts.
Corbin, how about you?
I love me some peanut butter or chocolate, so any kind of combination like that, I'll eat. I do like some sour candy as well. So if I am gonna go, or just like that kind of gummy type of candy. So if I'm gonna get some candy, it's probably gonna be some of that or some kind of like Reese's Pieces related candy. Yeah, I do eat candy, just not something I'll.
He picks the healthy candy because peanut butter is like, it's good fat, right? And
you get some protein with it.
So I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, exactly. There's not many hills that I'm going to die on, but I'm pretty passionate about my candy, and my wife and kids even know it. So usually for like Valentine's Day or some of these things, or Halloween, they'll get me like a little bag of Nerds. Man, I don't know why I like the Nerds candy. It's hard, it's sweet or sour, it's both. The little snack boxes that they have are perfect. They're like a shot. You just open it up and you hit them all. You don't eat them one at a time, or you don't even pinch them. You just put it all in your mouth at the same time and eat it. And it's like the perfect combination. And so I will fight anyone that does not like Nerds candy. So, well, that'll do it for the Shortstop wrap up from us here in the Fantasy Baseball Pod from Fighting Chance Fantasy Sports. Make sure to give us all a follow on Twitter. You can find Corbin at Corbin_Young21 and Jim at Jim Riley Live. And you can find me at Fantasy Geek 37. So thank you for tuning in for episode 5. Next week, we'll break down the third base position. And here, what we're going to try to do is throughout the season, or throughout the preseason and even into the season, we're going to try to give our whole staff a chance. And so who knows? We might have 2 or 3 different people on the show next week. Who knows? You might see Polka Pat, you might see JR Boyce, you might see, who knows who you'll see. So tune in for a great show as we break down third base. So thank you all for listening, and have yourself a great Saturday night.